all about. Okay, so please, all of you, mute your mic so that you can watch and also listen to it very well. All right, so I'm playing. Let me stop sharing and share. So please, all of you, mute your mic.
Communication between neurons and communication between neurons and muscle occurs at specialized junctions called synapses. The most common type of synapse is the chemical synapse. Here, we examine the events that take place at the neuromuscular junction, a chemical synapse using the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. Synaptic transmission begins when the nerve impulse reaches the presynaptic axon terminal. Depolarization of the presynaptic membrane initiates the sequence of events leading to transmitter release and activation of receptors on the postsynaptic membrane. Shown here are the principal molecules and organelles necessary for release of neurotransmitter. Synaptic vesicles exist in distinct pools, either tethered to the cytoskeleton in a reserve pool or free in the cytoplasm. Some of the free vesicles make their way to the plasma membrane and dock, as a series of priming reactions prepares the vesicular and plasma membranes for fusion. The membranes of the synaptic vesicles are drawn together via protein complexes, collectively called snares, that are expressed on the vesicle and presynaptic membrane. When the axon terminal is depolarized, voltage-gated calcium channels open, and calcium ions rush into the axon terminal. Some of the calcium ions bind to a protein on the synaptic vesicle membrane called synaptotagmin. When calcium binds to synaptotagmin on the synaptic vesicles nearest the active zone, the vesicles are drawn even closer to the presynaptic membrane. The vesicles fuse with the axon terminal membrane and release their transmitter cargo into the synaptic cleft. Some of the transmitter molecules bind to special receptor molecules in the postsynaptic membrane. The response of the postsynaptic cell, either excitation or inhibition, depends upon the particular neurotransmitter and receptor combination. For example, the receptor for acetylcholine is permeable to sodium. After binding acetylcholine, the channel opens and sodium ions enter the postsynaptic cell, thereby generating an excitatory postsynaptic response. Transmitters are inactivated or removed rapidly from the synaptic cleft so that transmission is brief and accurately follows the presynaptic input signal. For acetylcholine, an enzyme in the synaptic cleft, acetylcholinesterase, breaks down acetylcholine into choline and acetate. The release of transmitter from the receptors causes the channels to close. Not all transmitters are broken down by enzymes in the synaptic cleft. Many transmitters are rapidly cleared from the synaptic cleft by being taken up into the presynaptic terminal by special proteins called transporters. This process is known as reuptake. Reuptake not only cuts off the synaptic activity promptly, but also allows the terminal to recycle transmitter molecules. The membrane needed for creating synaptic vesicles is also recycled via endocytosis of the presynaptic membrane. The recycled vesicles are refilled with neurotransmitter molecules and are ready for another round of synaptic transmission.
All right. So I just want to find out from you, any of you, the video that you watch right now, can any of you give a brief summary of what it is all about? So in case you want to contribute, you can just raise up your hand, then I'll call you to that effect. All right, Joseph, your hand is up. So kindly unmute yourself and speak. Joseph, go ahead. Joseph, we could barely hear you. Maybe I think okay. Joseph, still we are having difficulties hearing you. I think maybe your network or something. Because you've unmuted yourself, but we could barely hear. All right, so any other person? Anyone has a fair idea about what the video is all about? The video that we just watched. Can anyone summarize it for us? Interesting. So it means
Yes, sir.
Okay, Samuel.
Communication between
Yes, sir.
Samuel, go ahead.
It's, in summary, it's telling us how the synapse transmitters go through the processes before it comes out.
Okay. So what kind of processes does it go through?
It passes through the axon terminal.
Okay.
Then it goes through. Then it goes through the muscular fiber, where some of the chemical reactions pass through the sodium. Then it comes out. Then it goes back to its.
All right. So thank you, Samuel. So Ralph, your hand is up. Ralph, go ahead.
Okay, sir. What I noticed is it's more about how action potential takes place and the activities within the axon terminals and the synaptic cleft.
Good.
Yes, it includes depolarization and reuptake.
Okay. So before reuptake, what really happens?
Before reuptake, the synaptic vesicles are released into the synaptic cleft.
Okay.
And when they travel down the axons, what remains go back into the receptors.
Good. Okay. So
yes, sir.
Thank you. So please, you can mute yourself. Then afterwards, I'll take it up from here. So one thing is with synaptic transmission, I earlier on said we have two neurons. So these two neurons, they are communicating. So per this diagram, when what I've projected here, the first membrane here, this membrane, all of these membrane, the first membrane you can find, the blue one that I'm drawing, is what is referred to as the presynaptic membrane, or sometimes we call it the axon terminal. You know, then the second, this membrane here is the second membrane. So it's the second axon or the second neuron here. And we call this membrane the postsynaptic membrane. And within the postsynaptic membrane is the dendrite. So it means the first neuron, okay, information will be transported to the axon terminal. You know, the axon terminal in any neuron, it is what? It is more or less like the root or the base of what? Of the neuron. So the axon terminal will then release whatever chemical to another neuron. And the other neuron, which is known as postsynaptic membrane, the first place or the first part of that neuron that should receive the information is what? Is the dendrite. Because per our previous readings, I said the dendrite, they are the ones that first receive what? Information. So it means the postsynaptic membrane that we are talking about is the dendrite of what? Of the second neuron. Then the axon terminal, sorry, the presynaptic membrane is the axon terminal of what? Of the first neuron. Okay. So within the axon terminal, okay, information is coming. So after action potential has taken place, or the cell has depolarized. The cell is transporting certain chemicals known as what? Neurotransmitters along the axon. So the cell, these neurotransmitters will move through the axon to the axon terminal. So these are some of the neurotransmitters. You could see there's a dark spot. So these dark spots are what is referred to as what we normally call neurotransmitters. Okay. So when they get to the base of what? Of the axon terminals, the moment they get to the base here, this side, something happens. So let me scroll a bit. Something happens. So you can see that they're about to get to the base. When they get to the base, a gate opens known as calcium. Okay, so calcium ions opens. So this is the gate of calcium. This is also the gate of calcium. So the gate opens to allow calcium, the red spot here that you see. These red spots, which is calcium, will then bind. So you can see that per the video. Let me do slow motion. Yes. Let me try and do slow motion here. Good. So you can see that the calcium ions just binded with what? With the neurotransmitter that got to what? To the base of the axon terminal. You can see that there's a calcium ion, the red thing here. Then there's another red thing here. It will bind. Okay. So when it binds, it then allows this circle here that you see is what is referred to as the vesicle. The vesicle is containing neurotransmitters. These are the neurotransmitters we are talking about. So the moment these vesicles get to the base and calcium ions binds with the vesicles, it allows the neurotransmitters to move outside. It will move to the synaptic cleft. And I say the synaptic cleft, they are more or less like what? The space in between the two neurons. So per the video that we watch, you could see that with time, see something. Let me
Binds to synaptotone with the axon terminal membrane on evils nearest the to synaptotagmin on the synaptic vesicles nearest the active zone. The vesicles are drawn even closer to the presynaptic membrane. The vesicles feel.
So you can see the moment it gets to the base and the calcium ions, which is the red thing, binds with the vesicles, it allows the neurotransmitters, the green spot that you see inside the circle, that's a neurotransmitter or the transmitters. It allows the neurotransmitter to move outside to the space, that's the synaptic cleft. So see, kindly watch the video.
Use with the axon terminal membrane.
So you could see that the neurotransmitter just what? They were just released into the space. Then afterwards, it will then bind with the receptors of the second neuron, which is the postsynaptic membrane. So these neurotransmitters will then bind here. It will then bind with this thing. These are the receptors. It will then bind with it. Then that's it. So please, any question so far? In case you have a question, kindly raise up your hand and I'll call you. Today, the class is very, very small. I don't know what is really happening. So in case you have a question. Yeah, Daniel, do you have a question?
Yeah, I think you said the class was very, very small. Also.
Yes.
Or slow. Yeah, because we had a class which is scheduled for the same time, which is already going on.
And interestingly, I don't know why there should be a class that should be set up. Okay, so let's go ahead. Any questions so far, or should I continue on? All right, so I assume that everyone have understood so far what just transpired. Okay, Rashida.
So I wanted to ask that when the vesicles release the neurotransmitters,
Okay.
and it gets to the receptors, there is they bind, right?
Yes, they bind.
Good. What, like a magnet, like it catches it like a magnet?
Yes.
Okay. What forces it to bind? Like, do they bind like male, female, or how do they? What actually? I don't know how to explain, but what makes it bind? After they have been released, they would bind. Okay. What will make it bind with the receptor? Which receptors will bind which one? What will catch which one? Like let me give this example. Like when a sperm is being released and it's chasing the eggs, you know, the fastest one will catch the egg. So in this case, how does it bind? What makes it bind? What will make it bind? I hope you are getting the question, sir.
I totally get you. Okay. All right, Daniel, you have a question. Kindly raise up your hand. Sorry, kindly unmute your mic and speak.
Yes, sir. Please, this is another question on top of my other colleague's question she just asked.
Okay.
And please, I wanted to know with the receptors, I think when the ones are being released into the receptors, what are the reverse action of it? They also go back again to the normal process,
Good. So I'll discuss that too. All right, so let me take these two questions. So please, you can lower your hand. One thing is, Rashida, your question, the moment the neurotransmitter, binds with the receptors, it causes an action. And you were asking what will cause it to bind. You know, the first neuron, an action potential took place. So when the action potential takes place, we are going through the mechanism, the previous action potential that we did. So after an action potential happens in the axon, it allows the vesicle to transport a neurotransmitter to cause an action. So you are going through that sort of action, it takes place. So it means an action potential has taken place in the axon, and the axon is transporting what? A neurotransmitter. So the neurotransmitter will get to the terminal button of that neuron and will then what? And will then move. The neurotransmitter will then move to where? To another neuron to cause an action. And depending on the type of neurotransmitter, I remember last week I told you neurotransmitters, it could cause either an excitatory response or what? Or inhibitory response. So these are the two things, depending on the neurotransmitter. So per the video that you watch, you could see that the person used acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is as an example. Okay. And the acetylcholine, let me spell it for you so that you get it. Acetylcholine. So please, someone's mic is on. Please unmute yourself. Acetylcholine. Acetylcholine is an excitatory neurotransmitter. Okay. And the moment acetylcholine moves to the receptor of another neuron, it then does what? It would excite. It means that it would cause the other neuron to also what? To also go through an action potential state. That's what excitation is all about. If the neurotransmitter is an excitatory neurotransmitter, then it means that it will then what? It would allow sodium ions to open. And you remember I said, when sodium ions are open, what happens? It causes another action potential to take place. Then Daniel was also asking, so after the neurotransmitter binds with the receptor, what happens? Would it stay there for long, or nothing will be done? When you watch the video, they were saying that when the neurotransmitter binds with the receptor for a while and maybe it causes an action potential, or it doesn't even cause, that's it inhibits any action potential. With time, depending on the neurotransmitter, if the neurotransmitter is acetylcholine, then after acetylcholine has done its job, the neurotransmitter will then be destroyed by an enzyme known as acetylcholine esterase. So this is the enzyme. So I'm repeating, after the neurotransmitter has done its job at the receptors of the second neuron, it will then be destroyed by an enzyme known as acetylcholine esterase. And so that's it. If it is another neurotransmitter, like maybe dopamine will then what? After dopamine has done its job, it would be taken into the first neuron by a transporter. So we normally say it will reuptake. It will be reuptake. So after dopamine has done its job, with time, it will move into the neurotransmitter will move into the neuron it came from. That's what I mean by reuptake. So that no activity or whatsoever will go on within the second neuron. Sometimes to other neurotransmitters, after they've done a job, okay, it will be oxidized. It means that gases will pass through the synapses to destroy the neurotransmitter. So these are basically some of the mechanisms through which they destroy the neurotransmitter after it has done its job. So either an enzyme will destroy it, or it will then move to another neuron, to the neuron it came from, known as reuptake, or gas will pass through it to destroy the neuron. Sorry, to destroy the neurotransmitter. All right. So please, if you have any questions so far, kindly raise up your hand and let me know. All right, Rashida, your hand is up again.
Yes, please. Sir, with the receptors.
Okay.
Do the receptors also have chemicals? Do they also have certain chemicals that are always with them that will bind with the neurotransmitter coming in, with the chemicals coming in, like just like as you said, the acetylcholine. Will the receptor also have certain chemicals that will attract acetylcholine?
The thing is, every neurotransmitter, okay, has its special gate. Okay, it has a special receptor that allows only that sort of neurotransmitter to bind. So the moment neurotransmitter, maybe acetylcholine, moves into the synapse, okay, it would automatically be attracted by by its receptor to bind. Then afterwards, it will it will cause whatever action it wants to cause. So they have their special gate that allows such thing to happen. All right, Rashida, your hand is up again.
Yes, I'm still on this receptor thing.
Okay.
Now, acetylcholine has its own receptors. Mm-hmm. And then, so does it mean that with the receptor, it also has acetylcholine, attracts acetylcholine? Or there's another chemical there that would attract acetylcholine?
Not necessarily. It's not a chemical. It's not a chemical. It's more or less like, take it like it is a gate, okay? So the gate has opened. In most situations, under normal circumstance, the gate is closed. That's the receptor that I'm talking about. That gate is closed in the sense that it wouldn't allow any substance to pass through it. so that it will go to cause an action within the second neuron. But the moment acetylcholine moves into the synapse, that special gate, which is solely for acetylcholine, okay, will be opened. Why? Because acetylcholine will then attach to that gate, signaling to the gate to open, so that it will what? It will penetrate and move into the second neuron to cause an action. So the receptor that we are talking about is more or less like a gate. So acetylcholine attracts what? That gate, so that it will just what? Bind at its aspects. The moment acetylcholine binds to the gate, it causes the gate to open. So that's the function of that receptor. It opens and allows acetylcholine to move through and cause an action in the second neuron. So Rashida, I hope you get it now.
Yes, please. I was wondering whether there were chemicals also there. That
No.
was where I was confused. Since it's not chemicals, I understand. It's just a gate.
Yeah.
That attracts. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. So let's say like you there's a special gate for, let's say, acetylcholine. So when acetylcholine gets there, it will open, and then it will bind and then open, so that an action potential will take place. And if it's inhibitory too, its receptors will accept it and then inhibit the process.
Exactly. I get it. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Okay, so please, any questions so far? All right, so let me continue on. Since there's no question, I assume that everything is self-explanatory now. So I'm moving on to your slides.
Hello, sir. Please, I have a question.
That's why I said, if you have a question, kindly raise up your hand. Okay, so please go ahead.
Okay. I want to understand if every chemical has its own receptor.
Yes, that's what I write, Daniel.
Okay.
Every neurotransmitter has its special what? Receptor that allows only that neurotransmitter to pass through.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So essentially, these are some of the types of neurotransmitters you're supposed to know. Okay. So neurotransmitters can be in different classes. So when it is amino, we have amino acids class, and within amino acids, we have different types of neurotransmitters. So for now, within your level, these are the neurotransmitters you're supposed to know: glutamate and GABA. Then acetylcholine is more or less like has its own class known as acetylcholine. Then monoamines. We have within monoamines, we have different types of monoamines. We have serotonin, which is a neurotransmitter, dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. Then we have another class known as purines, and under purines, we have adenosine. Then some gases also serve as neurotransmitters like nitric oxide. So it means that when you are tasked to mention any neurotransmitters, these are the neurotransmitters you're supposed to know: glutamate, GABA, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and so on. But we can group each and every neurotransmitter in different class. So glutamate and GABA, they are class under what? Under monoamines, amino acids. Then monoamines, we have serotonin, dopamine, and so on. So in exams, they can ask you, okay, so serotonin, dopamine are in what type of class? It means they are in what? Monoamines. Or they can ask some neurotransmitters that are in monoamines then you mention them. So these are some of the things you need to pay attention to. Okay. So let's go through some of the functions of what of these neurotransmitters. Some of the functions of these neurotransmitters. Okay, it's not in your slides. So let me try and see if I can get so it means you need to do an independent studies, try and find out some of the functions of the neurotransmitters. I think last week I mentioned some of them. So for instance, okay, Isaac, your hand is up. Isaac, your voice is very low, so please amplify your voice.
I want to know the meaning of GABA.
You said you want to know the what?
The meaning of GABA.
Oh, I remember last week I mentioned it. Who remembers what I said? The full meaning of GABA.
Gamma aminobutyric acid.
Good, good. So it's gamma aminobutyric acid. Gamma aminobutyric acid. That's the full meaning of GABA. All right. So what are some of the functions of glutamate? What would be some of the functions of glutamate? Oh, please, let's be snappy about this. I think last week we went through this. So every neurotransmitter, you're supposed to also know whether it is excitatory or inhibitory. So what is the function of glutamate, and is it excitatory or inhibitory? Oh, Teresa.
Listen, this is Nicholas.
Okay.
I know GABA as inhibitory.
Okay, and what's the function of GABA? And what's the function of GABA? Okay, so these are some of the things. Okay, Tamaklo.
Sir, GABA, I think GABA decreases activities of the brain.
Okay, so I remember I said, good, you're right. So I remember I said last week that in most situations, if someone has seizures or known as epilepsy, if someone has epilepsy, within the brain, there's a lot of what activity going on, firings. So the drugs given to epileptic patient, it helps to what? To decrease activities going on in the brain, because those drugs contain what? GABA. So that's the function of GABA. It decreases activities within the brain. And it is an inhibitory because you know it is going in there to what? To decrease activity. So we call it inhibit. It inhibits a lot of firings going on in the brain. So that's why we say it is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. Then glutamate. Who remembers the function of glutamate?
The glutamate, it helps in the learning and the memory activities of the brain.
Exactly.
Like the cognitive aspect of them.
Exactly. And it is what? It is an excitatory neurotransmitter. You should know.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what will be the function of serotonin? And you should also tell me whether it is inhibitory or excitatory. Oh.
They're almost.
Samuel, your hand is up. Kindly go ahead.
Yeah, it affects mood, hunger, and sleep.
Okay, and is it you're right. Is it inhibitory or excitatory? Okay, so you should know that it is inhibitory. That's one thing you should know. So please pay attention to these things. Then dopamine. What's the function of dopamine? All right.
So it influences movement and learning.
Okay, it influences movement and learning. Yeah. And what's the function of dopamine? Sorry, what is it, excitatory or inhibitory?
Excitatory.
It could serve as an excitatory and it could also serve as inhibitory. So that's one distinct, unique role of dopamine. It excites or inhibits the neurons. Okay, then the function of norepinephrine.
So it helps control alertness.
Yes, it helps control alertness. So in most situations, we normally say it plays a key role, especially in what we call it fight flight responses. And you should know some of the things under fight flight responses. It increases your heart rate. It allows your pupil to dilate and so on and so forth. All right. So one key thing you should know, we normally say that glutamate, for instance, okay, it plays a key role in a disorder known as Alzheimer's. So it means, you remember I said its function is to what? Is to control learning and memory. So it means if someone has less glutamate in his or her system, or the glutamate is quite small in the person's system, it could what? It could cause Alzheimer's. So Alzheimer's is more or less like a memory loss. So you can read more about it and all that. Then we also say that let me erase this one and move on. GABA. It means that if someone has what? Little GABA in his or her system, it could cause epilepsy or seizures. If someone has too little GABA in his or her system, it could lead to what? Seizures or epilepsy. All right. Then also serotonin. If someone has what? Decreased level of serotonin, it could lead to depression. So you should pay attention to these things, some of the disorders associated with the various neurotransmitters. Then too little dopamine. If there's a decreased level of dopamine, it could lead to something known as Parkinson's disease. Then too much of dopamine in a person's system will also lead to a disorder known as schizophrenia. So this one is too much. Then this one is decreased level. When there's a decreased level of dopamine, it could lead to Parkinson's disease. Then an excess level of dopamine could also lead to what? Schizophrenia. So these are the things you're supposed to know. Then we normally say that also increased level of norepinephrine and epinephrine could lead to anxiety. All right, so these are the things you're supposed to know. So please, any questions so far? Any questions so far? All right, Ralph, your hand is up. Ralph.
Yes, sir. Please, the norepinephrine and epinephrine. Can you please elaborate on it a little more, sir?
How? What elaboration do you need?
Sir, the
differences.
excess levels of it and decreased levels of it and their functions.
I said excess levels of it could lead to a disorder, no, could lead to anxiety. Okay, because we are saying it promotes fight, flight. So if it is too much in your system, then it means that it could cause a lot of what anxiety happening within your system. All right. So that's all when it comes to neurotransmitters. So let me move on to the next slide. All right, so some drugs, okay, some drugs, they are done in such a way that it has some component of neurotransmitters. Okay, so the neurotransmitters we are talking about, they are more or less like natural chemicals within our system. But scientists, they've been able to manufacture some drugs that works exactly like neurotransmitters. So remember we are saying especially anxiety. Anxiety happens, why? Because the person to a large extent has too much of norepinephrine in his or her system. And sometimes too, if the person has too little of serotonin in his or her system, it could also cause anxiety. So what happens? Scientists or physicians, they've tried to manufacture drugs that will boost maybe the levels of these neurotransmitters in the person's system. So for instance, serotonin is low in the person's system. So it means that there will be a drug that will be given to the patient so that it would increase the serotonin level and it allows the person to come into a normal state. Or norepinephrine and epinephrine is too much in the person's system. So those drugs will go into to inhibit some of the activities of norepinephrine so that the epinephrine wouldn't be too much in a person's system and the person will come into a normal state. So that's how some of these anti-anxiety drugs, they do. And we call them anxiolytics. Anxiety drugs. And we call them anxiolytics. So they go in there to what? To prevent the activity of, to decrease the activity of norepinephrine, especially because they're saying too much of norepinephrine could lead to anxiety. Then we're also saying that sometimes too little of serotonin could lead to anxiety. So some of these drugs, they go in there to increase the activity of serotonin in an optimal level. All right. So please, any questions so far? Okay. So I'm going ahead.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Please, what are some of the effects, side effects when we take this medicine? Because some people complain they have problems when they take this medicine.
Yes, it's not within your level, but one thing you should know is that some of these drugs, especially anxiety, it could cause sleep disturbances. Others have difficulties with eating, or sometimes they eat a lot. Sometimes, depending on the drugs, some of them too, it causes a lot of drowsiness. So the drowsiness will let them sleep a lot. Some of them too, they will tell you, oh, when I take these medications, it makes me become fat, or I bloat. So all these are side effects depending on the type of anxiety drugs you are taking, because even the anxiety drug, we have different types, but within your level, I'm not supposed to take you through that. All right. Then the next one is antipsychotic drugs. So antipsychotic drugs, for instance, they go in there to decrease the activity of dopamine, because we said too much of dopamine because we said too much of dopamine could cause a disorder known as what? So what did I say when it comes to dopamine? I want to find out whether you recall what I said. Too much of dopamine leads to what?
Schizophrenia.
Good, schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is a psychotic drug. So that's what we are saying, anti, or Americans will say anti. So anti, it means that it is counteracting the psychotic disorder. So we are saying that these drugs goes in there to decrease the activity level of dopamine in the brain. All right, and we have different types of antipsychotic drugs, and each type has its unique side effects. All right. Then the next one is antidepressant. It means that it goes in there to what? To treat depression. And in most depressive patients, they have, sorry, Rashida, your hand is up. Rashida?
Yeah, yes, I wanted to ask, what is schizophrenia?
We'll talk about it later. I don't want to lose off track. But one thing you should know is that it is a psychotic disorder, and in most situations, okay, most of these patients, they hallucinate and also have delusions. When I say hallucinations, you could see someone, you'll be there, then all of a sudden, the place is very, very quiet. Then someone will tell you, oh, I just received a message, an information that, hey, I need to do something. Or you'll be there, then the person will be shouting on top of his voice, telling you that he can see something flying within the air. All these things are symptoms of what? Of hallucinations, are symptoms of psychotic disorder. That's schizophrenia. So we will talk about it more later. All right. Then the next one is antidepressant drugs. So I'm saying with antidepressant drugs, we use it to treat depression. And in most situations, when it comes to depressive patients, they have decreased level of serotonin. So these drugs are given to them so that it will what? It will boost their serotonin level. It will boost their serotonin level. So please, any questions so far? Hello?
Please, you can continue.
Okay. So the next one is mood stabilizers. Mood. So we normally say that with mood stabilizers, most of them goes in there to inhibit activities. It goes into inhibit activities of what? Of activities going on in the brain. So for instance, lithium. Lithium in most situations, it inhibits the activity of dopamine and glutamate. You know, dopamine and glutamate, they are what? They are excitatory. So it means when dopamine is too much in the person's system, or glutamate is too much, we give the person what? Lithium, so that it will calm the person down. It will stabilize the person. Sometimes too, also glutamate increases GABA. And you know the function of GABA, right? GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter. So it means when lithium is given, it increases the activity of GABA so that it will calm the person down, because GABA goes in there to decrease the activity levels going on in the brain. So I hope you get it.
Yes, sir.
Good. Then the next one is morphine. Morphine. Morphine is mostly given to, we normally say that it is analgesics. Okay. Where is it? Where is it? Yes, analgesics. More or less like we call it painkillers. So for instance, when you go to the hospital and they want to do surgeries and all that, they give the person what? Morphine, in a sense that it's what? Or sorry, if the person is going through some pain, the person went through a series of accidents and all that, they give morphine to the person so that it would decrease the pain and also numb the person and all that. So one unique thing about morphine is that it goes in there to decrease the activity level of norepinephrine. Because we don't want the person to move too much, especially if they want to do some surgeries. They give the person morphine so that the person will calm down, right? And the essence is that we don't want the person to go through that sort of fight-flight responses. Okay, then the next one is psychomotor stimulants. Psychomotor stimulants. Most of these stimulant drugs, okay, they go in there to increase dopamine levels. Rashida, your hand is up again, or is by mistake? Okay. So psychomotor stimulants, they are more or less like, we call it stimulant drugs, especially cocaine. Okay, and even I don't know if I get this. I think marijuana will come. I need to get my facts right. But cocaine, especially, we normally say that it is a serious stimulant drug, meaning that it goes in there to increase the activity level of dopamine. And you know, too much of dopamine leads to what? Okay.
Hello, sir. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So I asked a question.
Okay.
So I'm saying that the cocaine, for instance.
Oh, you went off. You went off.
Schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia, exactly. So it means that's why we normally prevent people from taking some of these stimulant drugs, even marijuana. When you take in these things, it increases the activity level of what? Of dopamine. And when dopamine is too much, then it means that it could cause you to have those sort of hallucinations and so on and so forth. That's more or less like what? Psychotic. You are being psychotic. All right. And even amphetamines. There's a drug also known as amphetamine. And then methamphetamine also, meth, something like that. It is also a stimulant drug. And all these things increases the activity level of dopamine. Ophelia, please, your hand is up.
Okay, so I was asking if cannabis could be put under psychomotor and psychoactive drugs.
Yes. You're saying with cannabis?
Yes.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. We have another one known as hallucinogens or psychedelics. Okay, and with that, its sole purpose is to what? Its sole purpose is to cause a lot of things. Hallucinations, series of hallucinations. Okay, its sole purpose is we normally say it distorts your reality. Okay, in a sense that you become too much psychotic in that regard. Too much psychotic to cannabis. That's its major role. All right.
With excess of the psychoactive.
Can we also say tramadol is one of these psychomotor stimulants?
Can you come again? What you said?
Yeah, I'm asking, can we say tramadol is one of these psychomotor stimulants?
Tramadol?
Yes.
Yeah, to some extent. To some extent, yeah. But one unique function of tramadol is that, you know, tramadol initially it was serving as analgesics. I don't know whether you know of it. It is more or less like a painkiller. That's its major role. So it is an analgesics. It falls under analgesics, but when you take it too much, okay, then to a large extent it could cause a whole lot of what it will stimulate. But its major role is what? It's analgesics. Okay, Ophelia, your hand is up, or is the previous question? Okay, Rashida.
Sir, I wanted to find out that, so when these drugs are given, when you take these drugs,
okay,
they go through the process of action potential and all that. They go through that process.
Exactly. So that's why, yes, it goes through the process. So that's why I'm saying it is more or less like serving as a neurotransmitter, because it contains some component of it, and it goes through that process. So we normally say that it mimics the effect of of the neurotransmitters. So cocaine, for instance, okay, mimic the effects of of dopamine. So that's why we are saying when you take it too much in a system, it is more or less like you are taking a lot of dopamine. And you know the function of dopamine when it is in excess, when dopamine is in excess. So that's why the person has that sort of psychotic effect. All right. So please, any questions so far? All right, so per your slides, you've been given detailed information about the various function of the things that we discussed, psychedelics, marijuana, and so on and so forth. So I think it is self-explanatory for you. Or what do you think about this? Okay, Johnson.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Please, my question is, these drugs, when they entered our system, do they cause permanent damage to the nervous system, or as time goes on, it fades out and then the nervous system come back to its normal process level?
So for instance, when a person takes nicotine or cocaine, okay, it increases the activity level of dopamine. And then so per your slide, I'm just using your slide to explain it. It normally binds to the receptors of these dopamine receptors, the D2, D3, and D4 receptors. And one interesting thing is when you consistently take these stimulant drugs, for instance, for a longer period, it causes a whole lot of impairment in the nervous system. It causes a whole lot of impairment. That's one key thing, because it's more or less like you are forcing, you know, they are more or less like artificial things, right? So you are forcing it to have an effect. And when you consistently take it, especially in large dosage, it causes a lot of impairment, because you are putting too much pressure within the neurons and the nerves within the brain.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so please, any other question? Any other question?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, is it Paulina?
Hello, sir.
Paulina, go ahead. Francis, your hand is up. I'll get back to you later. Paulina, go ahead. Oh, Paulina, sorry, since I muted you, so please unmute yourself and speak.
Sir, my question is,
okay,
the gamma butyric acid, the GABA.
Yeah.
When it comes to exams,
okay.
Can you write? I'm not going to be penalized when you write only the GABA, or you are supposed to write.
I think to be on the safer side, it's better if you write the full name. To be on the safer side. Okay. Yeah.
All right.
So try and learn how to spell it and all
All
that.
right.
Unless maybe it
Thank
becomes
you.
okay. You're welcome, Francis.
All right.
Francis, go ahead.
Please, I wanted to know how neurotransmitters are measured in the system. How do you know whether you have too much or you have less?
Interesting. Interesting. For now, seriously, that'll be a difficult thing for me in itself to find out whether it is too much or too little. But I believe that they have maybe brain scans and everything that helps them to know that, okay, it is within an optimal level or not. But for now in books, there's nothing like, okay, when you have 20 milligrams of maybe serotonin, it is too high or too low. For now, we have in books, you wouldn't find it.
Okay, sir.
All right.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Sir, can we also use the side effects or some of the problems that one encounters when he shots those kind of neurotransmitters to be one of the means to detect if someone is suffering from this neurotransmitter?
Oh yeah, to some extent, the side effects would help you understand, will help you to know that, okay, there's an excess. But before even the person goes through the side effects, how would you know that, okay, it is too high or too little? I think that's where the core issue is, because we want a situation whereby you can prevent any sort of disorders happening. But as you said, the side effects is also one way of you knowing. Yeah. Okay. So also, in most situations, when you are reading, try and get series of examples, drugs that falls under maybe depressant drugs, stimulant drugs, and so on. Get examples of drugs which falls under them. Okay. So for instance, we are saying that with depressants, what does it do? It reduces the arousal level of the neurotransmitter. So interestingly, we are saying alcohol is a depressant drug. Why are we saying alcohol is a depressant drug? Who can explain why we normally say alcohol is a depressant drug? Oh.
That's up.
Yeah. I'm listening. Oh, there's someone, Anan Delano. I think you're the one who raised up your hand first.
It helps you to ease up a little, to forget your issues, to forget your issues a while.
Okay.
Or takes away your problem for some time.
All right. Good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I think the next person is Elaine. Elaine, kindly go ahead.
Yes, sir. Sir, it slows down parts of the brain and results in impaired cognitive functions.
Okay, yeah, that's one function of alcohol. Then Tamaklo.
Yes, sir. Alcohol is a depressant because I think it slows down bodily activities.
Okay. So when you say what kind of bodily activities?
So like allowing the body to be depressed, like.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Sammy.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you can go ahead.
Yeah, some say if you want to insult your in-law, you should drink, but it stimulates. So I don't understand why they say it depresses someone.
We'll come to that. I intentionally brought this argument. Okay, then Idrisu.
Okay.
So it reduces your alertness.
It reduces
your alertness.
Okay. Then I think last but two, Nicholas.
Yes, sir.
Nicholas, sorry, you can unmute your mic. Confident. Okay, Nicholas, go ahead.
It allows you to feel confident.
Sorry, so Nicholas is the one. Nicholas, you are next. Nicholas.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. When you're taking alcohol, you lose sensation.
All right. Then the last person, Queen.
Sir, please, I think Nicholas just said you lose sensation, but why do some people feel for sex instead? When they take alcohol, some people would love to have sex when they take alcohol. So is it antidepressant or what? I don't. That's my question.
We'll come to that. We'll come to that. One thing you should know is that whenever people take alcohol, the key thing is that it impairs their judgment. It impairs their judgment. So someone was asking, so why is it that when someone takes alcohol, they try to whenever they want to insult maybe their in-law or something, they go in there to take alcohol, because they know for sure that within your frontal lobe, we'll come to that in our subsequent discussions. The frontal lobe, one function of the frontal lobe is that we normally say that it plays a key role in what? In inhibition. There are certain things we know for sure that in public, you are not supposed to say. So your frontal lobe, to a large extent, it inhibits you from saying it. So when someone takes in alcohol, okay, it to a large extent impairs that sort of judgment, that sort of cognitive ability. It disinhibits the person, and it allows the person to say whatever he or she wants to say. Okay, so it doesn't make the frontal lobe become alert, because one function of the frontal lobe for it to be alert is to what? Is to inhibit certain information. So the moment you take in alcohol, the alcohol goes in there to depress, to inhibit. So that's why it reduces the alertness of what? Of the frontal lobe, thereby causing impairment of judgment. Yet at the same time, you could see that since the frontal lobe is what? Its alertness level is reduced, it means the person will have unsteady movement. because that's one function of the frontal lobe. It helps us to move steadily. So if the person arousal level within the frontal lobe is affected, then it means the person will have unsteady movements. That's why you could see that most people, when they take in alcohol a lot, when they booze a lot, they'll be swinging. It's more or less like they are swinging like a pendulum. And it also affects your perceptions. They are all within the frontal lobe because the frontal lobe is not alert enough or aroused enough. Okay, so Nicholas, your hand is still up. Nicholas, kindly unmute your mic and speak.
No, sorry, it was earlier on. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, no problem. No problem. Adele, your hand is up. Is it? All right. Karim, your hand is up. Mutala.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Most often,
Mutala, sorry, your voice is very, very far. Would you please amplify or be close to your device?
Sir, with regards to the abuse and
sorry, Mutala, still is your voice is very, very far.
Yeah, so sometimes when people take alcohol, having the mindset of like removing the stress or what, I think alcohol rather, like you rightly mentioned, impair their sense of judgment. The way they or the way they perceive things to be turns the opposite round. Because people feel like I'm drunk, there are things I can do. Now there are things I can do and I cannot do. Most especially, this is you can see it when people are driving. When somebody is driving, they care less about rounds and other things, and they don't even care where their life is. They don't even know where they are. So
Charlie.
I think, yeah, alcohol rather turns off our perception of how we see. So I think more that it is more depressing. Sometimes they don't even feel whether I'm hungry or I don't eat or whatever. Whether the sense that comes up when you are hungry or when you need to use ablution or whatever are all switched off because of the alcohol intake. People tend to take alcohol before you realize they are urinating all over themselves, and the way they will see a gutter in an attempt to cross the gutter, but they rather fall into the gutter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Alcohol. And people sometimes when they don't see the alcohol, things they used to do normally, they claim they like.
Yeah.
Yes, we are much into. People will say, if I don't take one shot, I cannot sit behind my wheel or I cannot go long distance. It's not that they cannot go, but the alcohol, when they take alcohol, it makes them do certain things, which rather I think is rather opposite. And look this our current society, for instance, I don't even know the reason why people take alcohol. When they are happy, like somebody like a wedding or whatever, they take alcohol. When somebody dies, unfortunately, they take. So I don't know how it is as depression. I don't know the connection in there. Because when you are happy, you take alcohol, and when you are not happy, you take alcohol. So this point, I'm seeing it to be a bit controversial when it comes to those who patronize alcohol. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Muzala. Thank you. So that's one thing. What I need to clarify this. It seems some students, you are kind of confused when you say something is depressant. Okay. So what I've projected, you can see that we are saying with depressant, it decreases what? The arousal of the nervous system, the arousal of the brain. So it means that alcohol, when someone takes it, it is what? It is decreasing the performance of what? Of some portions of the brain. So that's what I'm saying, per the example that I use. Oh, when someone takes in alcohol, it is decreasing their what? The performance of the frontal lobe. And the frontal lobe performs certain functions. So it means when the person takes in those alcohol, the frontal lobe wouldn't be able to perform well. The frontal lobe wouldn't be able to make a lot of good decisions. Also, the person's certain things the frontal lobe inhibits, the person will do it. So that's one function of of these depressant drugs. All right. So George, your hand is up.
Yeah. Thing about the alcohol, you know, when you take alcohol, you are saying that it affects the brain or the frontal lobe to function very well. But in this case,
I'm not saying
some people taking the alcohol.
George, let me clarify this. I said it doesn't allow the frontal lobe to function well.
Well, it doesn't allow the frontal lobe to function well.
Good. Yeah.
And then what of if somebody takes in alcohol and then it allows the sexual libidos become very active for him to enjoy more sex? What about that one?
Okay.
Does it mean the frontal lobe? Is it the frontal lobe that is creating the libidos to be very active, or what?
So that's what I'm saying. We will come to brain and behavior. Sorry, let me answer this. We'll come to brain and behavior. Okay, you can, when it gets to brain and behavior, you will know that it is not the frontal lobe which is responsible for what? For sexual activity. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
So we have a section known as the hypothalamus, which is responsible for those things. So we come to that. All right. So Rashida.
Sir, if serotonin, which affects mood and hunger, you know that when you drink alcohol, some people use as appetizers.
Yeah.
So I wanted to find out, like, if serotonin affects mood and hunger and sleep, and dopamine influences movement and other things, does alcohol have an effect on these neurotransmitters, or do these neurotransmitters have an effect on alcohol?
To a large extent, yes, I get you, because so for instance, alcohol could have an influence in especially dopamine. That's where you could see that the person will have that sort of that jerky movement we're talking about. Okay. Then to some extent too, I believe serotonin will be affected. So yeah, to a large extent, all these drugs that we take, it has some sort of balance and imbalances within the neurotransmitters we mentioned. Yeah. So you're right, Rashida. All right, so the last person, Daniel, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. I want to know, when it comes to the GABA, since it's a depressant, if somebody has a lot of GABA or more GABA in the brain, and that same person is also taking alcohol, how is it going to be like? Is it not going to be? It's not going to make the person more depressant, or
is it going to make the person what?
Like, is it going to make the person more slow? Like, doesn't, maybe will not think right, maybe go and do something wrong, wouldn't know what is actually happening.
Charlie, this is an interesting question. But I think, okay, so what we know so far, we know GABA does what? It decreases the activity levels, right?
Yes.
And alcohol too is a depressant. Then yeah, to a large extent, yes, you're right. It could cause a whole lot of disturbances. your thinking patterns, everything will be very, very poor and all that, because they are all decreasing arousal within the brain. So yeah, you're right.
Okay.
But one thing is, let me clarify this. You said if GABA is what? Is low instead or high?
No, I mean high.
High.
I mean high, yes, sir.
You said high.
Yes.
Okay, then you're right. So if GABA is high and you're also giving what? Alcohol, then definitely you have what? Poor judgment and all that. Yeah. Okay, so I'm glad that you are able to analyze and deduce certain things. So any other question? Any other question when it comes to these drugs? Okay, so let me also focus on marijuana. With marijuana, we normally say that in most situations, it could also cause these series of hallucinations, okay, that we know. It could allow the person to go through that sort of psychosis. Why? Because when someone takes marijuana, okay, it binds with the receptor, and it binds with this receptor known as cannabinoid receptors within the brain. And you can find most of these receptors within these parts of the brain. Okay, within this part of the brain. So it means when someone takes marijuana, it affects the cerebral cortex, which the frontal lobe is also part, meaning that the person will have poor judgment. Also, there's an area known as the basal ganglia, which also performs some secondary roles when it comes to movement. So in most situations, people who takes in marijuana, for instance, for a longer period, their basal ganglia could be destroyed, okay, leading to an excess level of dopamine, thereby causing a lot of psychotic disorders. And sometimes even it will get to a point whereby those psychotic disorders will cause something known as catatonic symptoms. We'll come to that later, which is about movement. They have impaired movement and all that. And sometimes too, their memory is affected because of this portion known as the hippocampus. For you to memorize anything or whatsoever, it solely depends on what? On the hippocampus. So when these drugs are taken for a longer period, it impairs what? Memory. So people who normally say that, oh, media, when I smoke, I'm able to what? Learn. That's what? A big lie. That's a big lie, because the moment you take in these things a lot, it causes a whole lot of disruptions within the hippocampus, thereby affecting your memory and all that. So these are some of the key things you need to know. All right. Okay, Olumide Adetona. Sorry if I didn't pronounce it well.
It's okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I would like to ask, with alcohol, you said it reduces the activities of the central lobe, the frontal lobe, the frontal lobe, and then it causes poor judgment.
Yeah.
But you see, they ask you not to drink and drive, but they don't say you shouldn't smoke and drive. But why is it so? Because when you talk about marijuana, it seems like it has the same effect as alcohol.
Yeah, to some
Both
extent.
causes poor judgment, but they say don't drink and drive. They don't say don't smoke and drive.
The thing is, one thing is, I think even marijuana, some people use it for medicinal purposes. So we have a way of us saying that it should be done in moderation, in very, very low moderation. And that's why I think when you go to, US, in some states, they have legalized marijuana. And I think even in Ghana right now, you should correct me if I'm wrong. I think even in Ghana right now, when someone smokes, there's no way the person will be Will be arrested or whatsoever. Right now, yes, that's the rule. The little information that I have. The essence is that we normally say that most of these drugs is supposed to be done in moderation. We are not saying that, okay, it is not beneficial at all. So for instance, alcohol, we are not saying it is not beneficial at all. So all these things should be done in moderation. But the moment you do it in excess, in too much, then it means you are causing a lot of distractions within the brain. That's the essence.
Sir.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes, but with marijuana, you see, a lot of people, a lot of people say it speeds up the brain processes. People even wait, even you see artists, a lot of artists, they have to take in marijuana. They say they derive inspiration when they take these drugs.
That's one thing. It's more or less like it keeps you alert. Okay, it has that sort of alertness level. Okay, but it doesn't necessarily improve your memory. It's because of the alertness level and everything that you have. Some people think that, okay, it has a key role to play when it comes to you learning or memorizing stuff. No way. No way.
Okay.
So that's one thing. That's one thing I need to I want to clarify. Okay, Johnson.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Johnson.
Yes, sir. I think you've answered part of my question.
Okay.
But let me ask. You see, we are talking about the alcohol and then other stimulant drugs here. So when I check the slide, the page before current page, there's something that they say stimulant drugs increase excitement and alertness.
Yeah.
So when I check synonym for alertness, I saw attentiveness, watchfulness, awareness, preparedness, and vigilance.
Yeah.
All these how do you call it, items here, they are good for human being. When you are attentive, when you are driving and then you are attentive, you are watchful, you drive carefully. But you see, when you take alcohol, you see it has a limit. Before the excitement shows. For instance, if you take some people when they take one bottle of beer, they don't feel anything.
Exactly.
So before you start feeling this excitement, alertment, unless you increase the level of the intake. So when the level increases, that means you become intoxicated or something like that.
Exactly. Your poor judgment will come in.
You see.
Exactly.
So at this level, they say then your attentiveness, your watchfulness is good.
It's disruptive.
I don't get it because if you are driving and then you have to take alcohol to become attentive or watchfulness, I think it's baffling my mind.
Yeah.
Then you can take marijuana instead, I think.
That's what I'm saying. Everything should be in moderation because the marijuana too, when you take it too much, okay, it means that it goes in excess, allowing you to have that sort of hallucinations. And if all of it, because it has increased the alertness to a high extent. So out of it, you are hallucinating one or two things. You could see that others will say, oh, I can see something flying in the air and all that. Because of those things that you are taking. Because you've taken it in a high or in an excess. So out of it, your brain or your mind is what? Is overwhelmed. Your brain is overwhelmed about the intake, causing that. And when hallucination sets in, irrespective of your alertness or your attentiveness, no matter what, you become disorganized entirely because you're confused about the entire situation, what is really happening. And what happens to you if care is not taken? Accident will happen. So that's what I'm saying. Whatever thing the person is taking, it should be done in what? In moderation. That's the key thing.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
All right. So, Christiana.
Hello, sir.
All right.
My question is, why do some people have headaches after taking alcohol?
Come again. You said why do some people do what?
Drugs. Why should after taking alcohol, why do they have headaches?
Why do they have headaches?
Not in excess. They don't take it in excess. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it could be some form of side effect.
And since it's a depleasant. Okay.
Yeah. It could be a form of what? Side effect. You know, even whatever drugs, the normal drugs that anyone takes, okay? The kind of
Yes, sir.
The side effect that it will have on one person is entirely different from what? From the other.
Yes, sir.
So from my perspective, I think it could be maybe a form of the side effect that some people they have when they take it. Right now, I wouldn't get maybe detailed explanation when it comes to that, but I think yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Whoa. So then Daniel, your hand is up.
Yes, sir. So please, I want us to look at something. We are talking about the brain as one of the major parts of the organs in the body.
Yeah.
But we have other organs that when we take these things in, they also have effect on these organs.
Okay.
So that's the reason why somebody is asking, okay, if you want to drive and if you want to be more alert, go and take in marijuana. Marijuana might give you that interpretation in the mind to be alert. But there's other organs in the body that the marijuana might be destroying. So I think that's the reason why you keep saying that moderation, so that they take into consideration other organs in the body. So that we don't concentrate just on what to feel in the mind and then go ahead and then destroy other parts of the organ.
All right. Thank you very much. Exactly. So, for instance, intake of, we normally say that when people smoke a lot, what happens to their liver? That's one key thing you're also supposed to know. It could cause a disorder known as, I think, cirrhosis or whatever. So all these things, and even it would affect your lungs and so on. Yeah, so you're right. Okay, Idrisu.
Yes, so my question is, the cocaine, if you check, you said it blocks the reuptake of dopamine and the serotonin in the body. So does it mean that those who take that, it blocks their reuptake? That is the effect of the behavior we've been seeing the people who are taking those medicine around in our communities.
One thing is, okay, let me explain. You remember, what reuptake is all about, what I said. You remember I said, yes, after a neurotransmitter has done a job, one function is that it will move back to its original place. That's the reuptake. But we are saying cocaine will prevent that thing from happening. So it means the dopamine will still be in what? In the synapse. Okay. Making it excess in the brain. So when that happens, it means when too much dopamine is in the system, what happens? You have series of hallucinations and other psychotic symptoms. So that's what happens when people taking a lot of what? A lot of cocaine. That's what happens to them. You could see that their mind is what is overwhelmed, and then out of it, they'll be what? They'll be doing all kinds of things, irrational things, and also hallucinating. Yeah. So I think we've exhausted the time. If there's no question, then that will be the end of today's discussion. So any question? All right, then I think we can, oh, someone's hand is up. Oh, let me check, I saw. The person can unmute him or herself and speak.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ralph, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Please, with regards to what you made mention of about marijuana in Ghana, I only wanted to put a few stuff across so that we all stay informed.
Okay.
If that's okay by you.
All right.
Yes, sir. With the marijuana in Ghana, it's only the hemp variety which has been legalized. That is for medicinal purpose and industrial, yes, medicinal and industrial purposes.
Okay.
The other strains which contains a high level of THC is still criminalized, which means you can go to jail for possession and usage of them. So that's what I wanted to say, sir.
Okay, thank you very much, Ralph.
Yes, sir. You're welcome, sir.
All right. So I think today we've really been educated. So thank you all for joining this class and having this meaningful discussion. I really enjoyed the class.
Hello, sir.
All right. So we'll see you, God willing, next weekend.
Thank you, sir, for your time. Nice presentation, sir.
All right. Thank you too. All right. Bye.
Sir, let us see your face before you go.
Okay, so I'll do that next weekend. Don't worry.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Sir, are you sure? Oh,
yeah.
No, sir. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir. We are very much grateful.
All right. Take care.